Hey amigos, we're into day 2 of a 3-day processing of the life of Herod Antipas and a historical context deep dive into the political reality and political drama that surrounded the events of the Gospel of Matthew. If you haven't caught yesterday's episode, today's episode is going to make a lot more sense if you go back and grab it. With that in mind, let's get cooking. The way it looks like it plays out is that back in Rome, in this overwrought, flowery, dramatic imperial court lifestyle, where everyone's always maneuvering against everyone else to try to get ahead, Antipas made some questionable friendships. Now, while Tiberius was in office, stuff got kind of weird in this court because Tiberius went and made his own court on the Isle of Capri off the coast of Naples, south of Rome. Tiberius liked governing at first, but eventually it looks like he got kind of bored and wanted to do licentiousness. And so he made this booze and drugs and liquor and women pleasure palace, that the ruins of which still exist there. I think you can still go check those out. And more, he didn't spend his time at court governing. He spent his time there, and he had some strong men that he appointed to govern his affairs while he was gone who ran things. Now, this is very important because it all ties in to the political scene that results in Jesus' execution. Tiberius's right-hand man was a guy named Sejanus, or Sejanus. He has Janus in his name, like the two-faced Roman god, like the nickname that Alec Trevelyan took on in GoldenEye as the dirty double agent. So right there in the name, you should be able to suspect this guy could turn out to be a problem, and he does turn out to be a problem for Tiberius. So Janus appoints a bunch of political outsiders while Tiberius isn't paying attention to various gubernatorial roles around the empire. And of course, ultimately, the buck stops with Tiberius. So these governors are Tiberius's appointees, but in a practical sense, they answer to Sejanus, and one of these governors is Pontius Pilate, a guy who on the surface has no pedigree. It just doesn't make sense that Pilate would get an appointment like Judea. I mean, it's a pretty good job. Now, you'll read in some places that people are like, it's a terrible backwaters outpost, and it was a pain in the butt. Yeah, well, maybe, but it was a very rich pain in the butt, and it was one that had tremendous opportunity for climbing the political ladder in Roman society. And if you're Pontius Pilate and nobody even knows what your dad's name was or where you came from or how you got your own name because you were that insignificant historically beforehand, this is a huge appointment. You won the lottery. And so Pilate's early actions when he gets there demonstrate that he's paranoid and really trying hard to please Tiberius, because it looks like maybe Pilate suspects that his benefactor, Sejanus, Tiberius's right-hand man, and effectively the executor of the government while Tiberius is hanging out at his pleasure palace, it looks like Pilate might anticipate that he's going to need Tiberius's favor at some point, because maybe he suspects that Sejanus's footing isn't as strong as Sejanus thinks. Well, Antipas is tied up in this weird circle. Antipas gets along pretty well with Pontius Pilate. Antipas also gets along pretty well with Sejanus. Antipas does not have a deeply intimate relationship with Tiberius, the emperor, but a bunch of Antipas's other Herod family members do have stronger relationships with Tiberius. So you can see this is getting Game of Thrones, House of Cards very dynamic here in terms of what's going on with these relationships among these powerful people and who writes a letter to whom, and whether that letter is received on a day where somebody's interested in reading it and paying attention has so much effect on the unfolding of all of history in this moment. Well, I would argue that Antipas did not play the court game very well. This marriage to Herodias was dumb. If he had been strategic in other ways, he was not in this moment. And here's another Game of Thrones reference. Game of Thrones is, of course, drawn from all of the juiciest bits of Western history. If you don't like that show, you're offended by that show, this will still be helpful for you understanding what we're talking about here. If you do like that show, okay, cool, well then you'll know exactly what I'm driving at. There's a young king named Robb Stark, and it looks like he is going to be victorious and address all of the crises of the kingdom that need to be solved, but he falls in love with the wrong person, and it proves to be extremely costly to his efforts and ultimately is his undoing. That resembles in a lot of ways Antipas's misstep with Herodias here. That misstep, that breach of trust, causes a family division that is exacerbated by everybody in the Herod family tree trying to bounce messages back to Sejanus and Tiberius to jockey for better position for control over the provinces of Galilee and Judea. Well, Antipas would have been well positioned if the guy with whom he cast his lot, Sejanus, had won out. But Sejanus did not win out. He misplayed his hand. He got caught. Tiberius figured out that Sejanus was conspiring against him in pursuit of fully taking the imperial throne from the partying, overwhelmingly absent emperor. And when Tiberius found out, guess what? He was real grouchy about it. It was like, well, I wouldn't want somebody to kill me and take my throne from me. I would rather kill you. And so in 31 AD, Sejanus is executed. Now you might be like, oh my goodness, I can't keep track of all of this stuff. Who cares? Why does this matter? Here again is why it matters, because all of these silly little dramatic court dynamics factor into the ultimate political decision to execute Jesus of Nazareth. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, is caught in the middle of all of Antipas's gimmicking around with Sejanus, the conspirator, and Tiberius, the emperor. Pilate was probably appointed by Sejanus, and so right off the bat to Tiberius, when this conspiracy is exposed, it's going to look like Pilate is in league with Sejanus and maybe Antipas as well, and Tiberius is going to be mad. So Pilate looks like he's trying to run all of his big political decisions through the decision-making matrix of what will make the absentee emperor happy on his pleasure island. We've got plenty of records to demonstrate that when Tiberius seems grouchy about a play that Pontius Pilate made, he immediately shifts gears. Like, oh, super sorry, I'll do it this other way. It looks like Pilate is not that interested in pleasing Antipas or playing ball with him. And even at the trial of Jesus, Pilate comes off like somebody who's got his hands in his head and his eyes squinted shut. And he's like, I don't know. I don't care about your religious disputes. Antipas, you're going down anyway. I don't care what Sejanus wants. I just have to figure out what makes sense for saving my own skin. How would Tiberius want me to handle this? I think he just wouldn't want a headache. And it seems like the best way to not have a headache is to give them some other guy. Barabbas, fine, you can have him, whatever, and fine, I'll kill this dude. He seems innocent to me, but fine, I'll just kill him. The gospel accounts of Pilate's decision-making are consistent with a Pilate who is not really adjudicating the Jesus case at all. He sort of doesn't care. He's just trying to figure out how to stay afloat in this impossible political situation he's finding himself in. An impossible political situation that was set in motion by Antipas marrying his brother's wife, and then Antipas buddying up with Sejanus in some kind of conspiratorial way that's causing a meltdown of court life and a division of everybody into these two camps. Well, eventually Pontius Pilate is recalled, and on Pontius Pilate's trip back to give a report to Tiberius in Rome about his time as governor, Tiberius dies and is succeeded by Caligula, who is nuts! Absolutely nuts! And we are still not done with Herod Antipas, the Herod family, and the political court drama surrounding the era of the Gospels. This is stuff that I think is really important for us to understand in order to put our heads where the original audience's heads would have been. In the same way that if I bring up the Obama administration or the Reagan administration or the Thatcher administration, that is going to immediately conjure context and feelings for anyone who is familiar with those different eras of political leadership in various countries. So it is with the original audience here. Conjuring the name of Herod Antipas is going to evoke in the minds of the original audience strong reactions and strong associations. And if we want to understand the Bible better, we need to get a sense of what those reactions and associations might have been. Thus, the exercise that we are engaged in yesterday, today, and with what's coming up tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with me. Got more of this to come. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.